As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and one of the very important cases going on in Washington, D.C. actually deals with freedom of the press. Simon Ateba, who is a journalist and has been covering the press briefings and the Biden administration, has recently had his hard pass revoked and his access foreclosed to the briefing room. He says that this is arbitrary and capricious and against the protections that the First Amendment affords to journalists. This is what my good friend David Harris Jr. on Newsmax said about this case, and also some footage of some of those kind of highly contentious interactions with current Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. Watch this.
African White House correspondent Simon Ateba filing a lawsuit Thursday against White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. Ateba accused the White House of violating his First Amendment rights by revoking his hard press pass, stating, quote, the press does not just include a small class of elite journalists credentialed by one another. The First Amendment guarantees protection of the public's right to engage in constitutionally protected press activity. Hard passes allow for journalists to gain access to White House press events, including press conferences, important access for smaller media. In May, the White House announced that it was restricting who could receive a hard pass. After changing its rules of eligibility for journalists, Ateba, along with over 440 other reporters, officially lost their credentials on August 1st. Simon Ateba has had a few notable clashes with Karine Jean-Pierre in the press room. Watch.
Discriminating against me for the past 9 months.
Stop. If this continues, we're going to end the press briefing.
I've been in this
if this continues, you're being incredibly rude. No, I literally just tried to answer your question. You shut me down. So now your colleague is going to...
Let me ask the question first before you answer.
Thanks, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.
She has a valid question. She's asking about the origin of COVID.
I hear the question.
And Dr. Fauci is the best person to answer.
I hear your question, but we're not doing this the way you want it. This is a disrespectful. It is. I'm done. Simon, I'm done. Simon, I'm done. I'm done with you right now.
All right, so Simon and his attorney, Gary Lawkowski, will join me right after this. With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to your to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you. So joining me now is journalist Simon Ateba and his attorney, Gary Lawkowski from the First Liberty Center. And gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. And Simon, I want to start with you. And you have alleged in your lawsuit that the White House and also Secret Service are now changing the criteria for journalists to have hard passes, and that this is a violation of your First Amendment right to freedom of the press. And you're now petitioning the government for redress, which is another fundamental right secured in the First Amendment. So what happened here and what is your lawsuit alleging?
Okay, first of all, thank you for having me. The White House has been targeting me for the past 2.5 years, almost 3 years since President Biden came to power. And they've done that because I'm trying to do my job, asking the right question. The public has the right to know, and I have a duty to tell. And my job when I go to the White House is just to ask the relevant question, tough questions. And I don't need to be friendly with the press secretary or even the president himself. All I need to do today is to ask my question and do my job. So in May, the White House changed the rules to exclude me from the briefing room. And what they did basically was unconstitutional. They asked us to go to the Supreme Court press gallery to get credentialed by the Supreme Court before we could be credentialed, renew our hard passes at the White House. But the Supreme Court doesn't actually do that. They have only 25 journalists who cover them full time, and they don't give hard passes to people who cover other branches of government. And they did it only because I'm doing my job, and I went to court to prove that what they did was illegal, and we expect to win.
Yeah. So Gary, then, with this lawsuit, it seems like this is targeting specifically a journalist like Simon. And, is this something that can be upheld in terms of any precedent? I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Jim Acosta from CNN said that the Trump White House was violating his press credential right to access, and that ultimately wasn't even litigated. The Trump White House allowed him his hard pass back. So, what is the precedent here?
So thank you again for having us. And yeah, there are two cases that are really good precedent for what's happening here that occurred during the Trump administration. So first, as you mentioned, there was Jim Acosta, and we all remember kind of some of his behavior in the White House press room and how that was received. There's also another case that actually went up to the D.C. Circuit, which is the appellate court in the District of Columbia for the federal court system, involving a journalist from Playboy. Apparently, there is still someone who reads Playboy for the articles. But he went up to the D.C. Circuit and was able to get his hard pass back as well after it was revoked. It wasn't even revoked. It was temporarily suspended after he got into an altercation with several White House staff, verbal altercation. Those are kind of the cases that we're drawing from. There's not a whole lot of precedence here because it doesn't happen that often. The White House is a relatively small area compared to the First Amendment and compared to the breadth of free speech in this country. But it's clearly an incredibly valuable one. And it's clearly been upheld before that the White House can't exclude journalists just because they ask tough questions, just because they don't like what they're saying, just because they make them kind of answer to the American people.
Yeah. And so, Gary, then with this, and that there isn't a lot of legal precedent, what is the argument then for from the White House for excluding someone like Simon and making him jump through all of these hoops? I mean, I'm assuming that there are more than 25 credentialed hard pass journalists that can access the press room that may not have Supreme Court or other branches of government hard passes or credentialed in Congress or the Supreme Court with these new rules. And so is there an uneven or unfair application going on here?
Absolutely. And that's one of the interesting things. The White House hasn't really defended this policy. They put out a very cursory email that just said, hey, we're doing this. It certainly seemed to come targeted at Simon and at journalists like him who are holding the White House accountable. They didn't provide any explanation for why they're doing this or why, whether you're credentialed at the Supreme Court is relevant, whether you're credentialed at Congress is relevant, particularly for someone like Simon who's been covering the White House for several years and has a track record there. And that is part of our claim here, is that this is arbitrary and capricious, which is the language, as you know, and as some of your viewers may know from the Administrative Procedure Act, for agencies can't just do things randomly because they feel like it one day. And the Secret Service's involvement is an agency that brings that in. So again, the White House hasn't really offered an explanation, so we don't know what they're thinking here, other than it sure seems to be targeted at getting rid of Simon.
Yeah, so Simon, when the whole thing happened with Jim Acosta and his press pass was suspended for that behavior that we all remember, and there were so many in the journalistic and press community that rushed to his aid, that said this is totally unfair. This is saying that that free speech isn't allowed, that press access isn't allowed. And so, have you seen any sort of support from any of your fellow press community, particularly conservatives, that maybe understand why your questions are so important, or has this kind of been a one-man fight?
Yeah, so I've seen people attacking me. I've seen people write pieces against me. And for those watching now, in 2018, the New York Times headline on Jim Acosta was, "Let Jim Acosta do his job." In 2023, their headline on me was, "Why can't Simon stop shouting?" It shows you the double standard. Politico wrote hit pieces against me, complete lies and fabrication, even saying that they called me, they contacted me for their report. They didn't do that. They called me a blogger. I have 2 degrees in journalism. I've done my entire life, I've done only journalism. I've been arrested, accused of being a spy for Boko Haram, attacked by pirates on the Gulf of Guinea with an AK-47 to my head. I've written thousands of stories, trained so many people around the world. In the US, I've trained countless students at countless American universities and paid them with our own cash. So they tried to discredit me and they tried to assassinate my character. But the guy who wrote the story sits right in front of me in the White House and hates me and behaves like someone who has failed in life and is jealous of someone who, is doing his job. I've not seen a lot of people come to my defense. I've seen people attack me, write hit pieces. I've seen the Washington Post write a completely false story against me. I've seen Politico and different others. So I've not seen it. I've seen them defend Jim Acosta. I've seen them defend Brian. I've seen them defend people on the left. And because at that time, they believed that President Trump was the demon, he was the devil, and he had anyone who opposed him, even when they became activists, was doing great work. But when it comes to Simon, they do completely, they do something completely different.
Wow. And Simon, I can understand, unfortunately, why CNN and the Washington Post and, some of these that are Joe Biden's biggest defenders and the administration's defenders, why they wouldn't come to your aid, which I think is ridiculous, because the press, no matter what their belief or their particular bias on a story is, they should understand that the freedom of press is for everyone, and everyone is entitled to ask questions, and everyone should be pushing back against the hard questions. And they wanted to be able to push back against the Trump administration, so why not you for the Biden administration? But I can understand, the leftist and the left-wing media is never consistent. It's always unequal application. The rules apply to them and nobody else, right? Or they want to, or the rules don't apply to them and they have to apply to everybody else. But in particular with conservative media and those who do want to hold the Biden administration accountable, have you seen any support from some of your colleagues in the more conservative-leaning outlets at all, or are they more silent on this issue as well?
Yes, so I just did an interview on Newsmax, and I used to have a lot of support from Fox News, and I may be on Fox News tomorrow, but Fox News has not been able to have me on because they said that as long as I keep supporting Tucker Carlson, they won't have me on. They've canceled 2 of my appearances previously after calling me and asking me to be on the show. And I've seen a lot of support from some people, the New York Post and the Daily Caller, your show and different other shows. But I've seen zero support from people who claim to love the First Amendment, defend the First Amendment, or even love people who look like me, who are Black, who are minorities. The reason I went to cover the White House full time when President Biden came to power is because the New York Times told us President Trump was a racist and he was a bad guy, and now the good guy had had come to power, and we decided to cover the White House full time. But now I've been disappointed, and I've realized that the people who claim to love people like me, who claim to love a free press, they actually love those things when it has to do with a particular type of people or a particular type of media organizations.
Well, to be very clear for you and also all of my listeners, I support you 100% in everything that you're doing in terms of asking the difficult questions, asking about Hunter Biden, asking about cocaine in the White House, asking about all of these things that the leftists won't do. Those are the things that responsible Americans who want transparency from our government appreciate about you. So you're welcome here anytime, and fully support your lawsuit and everything that you're doing, Simon. And, we are praying for you and praying for your success. And so, Gary, how has this also impacted Simon's entire career path as a journalist and his current employment being foreclosed and having this access cut off? And is that something you're also seeking to remedy in terms of harm with this lawsuit? And what would you like to establish as precedent in this type of situation? Because we've seen how a lot of the rules and perhaps even the jurisprudence on this can change depending on whether it's a Republican or Democrat in the White House.
Absolutely. So this impacts Simon's career path because, as the White House Correspondents Association itself wrote in some of those other cases, you really can't cover the White House without a hard pass. There's late breaking news. There's things that happen at the last minute that you really need to be there in order to be able to effectively cover. When you take away a journalist's hard pass, you're really taking away their ability to cover the White House effectively. And that's really striking at his livelihood. That's really striking at his ability to do his job and to provide the American people and the broader world with the information that he can provide.
And so what ultimately would you like to see from a legal perspective, the precedent here in terms of the parameters and how the White House, no matter who is the occupant of the Oval Office and what administration, whether Republican, Democrat, or anything else, I mean, we need to have some established standards so that they can't target particular journalists and cut off their access. It seems to me that would be in keeping with the whole spirit of the First Amendment and also the text of the First Amendment, to say that journalists can't be targeted just based on their political viewpoint or their questions.
Yes. We'd like to establish that the rules apply to everybody. The rules that are in place during the Trump administration are in place during the Biden administration and will be in place during the next administration. It's the same rules for everybody as we go along. We'd also like to establish that you can't just do this arbitrarily. We understand that there is some degree of the White House has to be able to set rules about who's coming in and out of the White House, but they can't be just arbitrary rules designed to exclude your critics. There has to be some reason behind them, and there's really not behind these, at least not that the White House has publicly articulated. For example, as Simon mentioned, what's a Supreme Court press pass got to do with covering the White House? How does a full-time Supreme Court reporter relate to the job of covering the White House? What does covering Congress have to do with someone who's been a White House correspondent for several years now? I don't know. I don't know the White House can articulate a reason, and they should be able to if they're going to try to take someone's livelihood away by revoking their hard pass.
Yeah, absolutely. And has the White House responded at all to this or to any requests to reinstate Simon or anyone else?
Not that I'm aware of. I think there may have been one case where they gave someone a brief reprieve while they were going through an application process, but I'm not aware of them actually reinstating anyone directly, but not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And then also, just so I'm clear as well, is this these new arbitrary and capricious rules, are they applying only to Simon, or have there been other journalists that have been excluded and their hard passes revoked under this as well? And if so, are they also joining in your lawsuit?
There are other journalists. At this time, they are not joining in our lawsuit. We're certainly happy to talk to them if they would like. But at this time, we're focused on Simon because we understand that he's the impetus for this. That it's really the White House was looking for a way to get rid of him, and this was kind of the way they did it. And that other people may be collateral damage in that process, unfortunately.
Wow. Well, and Simon, I think that anyone who has been watching any of the press briefings or the clips that you have posted and others have posted on social media about your interactions with especially the current press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, she clearly was trying to avoid any of your questions and diminish your voice. And describe for those who maybe haven't seen a lot of those exchanges what it was like in terms of her treatment of you when you were in the press room versus the other journalists whose questions she welcomed because she liked the substance of those apparently.
Yes, actually, she came to the briefing room many times and she wished journalists happy birthday. She, she would say, "Hey, I didn't know it's your birthday today." She actually called on journalists who didn't raise their hands. She once called on James Rosen of the Newsmax, who, he sat next to me, and he told her, "I didn't raise my hand, I don't have a question." At the same time, when I had my hand raised for 9 months and she wouldn't call on me. I want people who are watching us to understand one thing. Covering the White House doesn't stop at the briefing with the press briefings. You have background calls. They don't call on me. You have you can email them. You can talk to people in the White House. You can go to the press secretary office. You can talk to the press office. But what they've done essentially is to make sure that I don't get any question during background calls. They've called on me maybe once or twice in 3 years. And they call on some people every single time during background calls. They don't call on me during press briefings. Even when President Biden received 50 African leaders in Washington, D.C., even when the First Lady went to Africa, even when the Vice President went to Africa to discuss U.S.-Africa relations. And I want people who are watching now to understand that the U.S. is not just a country. It's almost like an empire. There are billions of dollars of taxpayers' dollars that used in Africa, in different places around the world. So when I ask questions regarding U.S.-Africa relations, it has to do with the money that people who work every day don't even know where their money ends. And so they've been targeting me. They've been doing everything to try to silence me for simply doing my job. And she's been, I'm sorry to say, she's been extremely nasty, towards me, attacking me, trying to diminish me, trying to discredit me, and even calling on other journalists. The White House Correspondent Association and the White House, we call on Politico and the Daily Beast and the Washington Post to write negative stories about me, and they come and it's a shame. No one should read Politicos, and no one should read the Washington Post or the Daily Beast. I've seen how they operate. I've seen how they try to assassinate my character. There's no difference between assassinating my character and assassinating someone on the street. And it's a shame, and I've been treated extremely badly. But I believe that our First Amendment right case, it's a good thing, not just for me, but for the 442 journalists who have lost access to the White House. And for many journalists who will come long after I've left the White House, long after every single person who is in the White House now is no more there. Today, President Biden is in power. Tomorrow, President Trump may be in power, and some other president may come after them. No president should have the authority to decide who covers them. And covering the White House has nothing to do with covering the Supreme Court or covering Congress. And so they didn't do their homework very well, and that's why I believe that they will lose in court.
Really well said, and absolutely agree with you that the government shouldn't be picking and choosing what journalists get to cover them, and I get to have that access to then speak to the American people. And that's not transparency, that's bias, and it's activism. And so, Gary, just in the last 2 minutes I have with you both, and thank you so much for your stand for the First Amendment, for freedom of the press in a real way, and to ensure that the legacy of free and fair journalism continues in this country. Where does this case go from here, Gary?
Hopefully into court, into the district court in D.C., the federal court out there, and we'll let the judges resolve this. It's unfortunate that it's come to this, but that's the way the White House has chosen to handle this situation rather than adopting a rational policy. And if they've chosen to exclude Simon, that's where we'll have to go.
Yeah, well, I certainly wish you the best and success in this, and we'll look forward to speaking with you again along the way as this develops. But Simon, thank you so much for your courage and for standing up with truth and wanting to confront the administration with real questions that not only your readers, but also everyone in the world, including the American public, deserve to hear. So I respect you. I consider you an excellent journalist and really appreciate everything that you've done to cover this administration fairly. So thank you for standing up. And Gary, thanks so much for your work as well on this case. So really appreciate you both dropping by. With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to your to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you.
On MyPillow's 20-year anniversary, with over 80 million MyPillows sold, Mike Lindell wants to thank each and every one of you by giving you the lowest price in history on his MyPillows. You will receive a queen-size MyPillow for only $19.98. The regular price is $69.98 and just $10 more for a king size. You'll receive deep discounts on all MyPillow products such as bed sheets, mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, which I love, and so much more. This is the time to try out some of the amazing products you've had your eye on from MyPillow. So go to mypillow.com and enter promo code Jenna to receive this amazing offer on the queen size MyPillow for $19.98. You can go to mypillow.com or call 1-800-564-8475. Be sure to use the promo code Jenna. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Jenna.